All right, everyone. Welcome to Ignite Power Session 10. Thanks for sticking around with us throughout this entire endeavor called Ignite. So we're going through this process. We're talking about how to build your business. We're working with buyers and we're working with sellers. We're lead generating. And now we're to the point now, if you can imagine this picture, this journey, we're negotiating the deal. We're at that point right now where we're making an offer, right? We just did make and receive offers the last session. And this session kind of ties right along with it. So where we left off last time was, how do you create a deal? How do you create that contract? What are some different tricks and tips and things that you would do when making an offer, right? Calling the other agent, building rapport, saving yourself some time out there, guys, making sure that you're asking the right questions to those agents. And so this is kind of where we pick up. This is kind of where, let's envision that we have an offer out and we need to understand exactly how to tackle it when the other agent comes back to us and says, hey, we like your offer. We're probably more than likely going to go with you guys. However, we want to talk through some things. So negotiating, right? Negotiating the deal. It's kind of where we're at. And then as we progress through this class, well, again, if for those of you just jumping in, I take this through the Ignite material as well as kind of practical applications. So throughout this series, I definitely want to make sure we get through how to negotiate the deal up front, but then how to keep the deal intact or negotiate through the rest of the time. So through inspection, through appraisal, through any hiccup really. But one of the first things that I think we need to start off with Ignite and talking about negotiations is, here at Keller Williams, we are looking for a win-win, right? We're looking for a win-win on both sides. What the key with a win-win type of deal is that there are going to be times where if you don't, let's put it this way, what you focus on expands, right? And so if you're that bulldog, if you're that agent that's just trying to run people over, guaranteed fact, you're just throwing it out to the world for you to be ran over the next time around. The key with the win-win is that, one, you're going to be interacting with the same agents multiple different times throughout your career. If you're doing big business, you're going to start to recognize the same names, as well as you're going to start to understand people's names and who agents are based upon how they interact with you. So for instance, I'm not going to name any names on here, but I've been doing this for a long time now, and there are some people's names that I cringe when I pull up to the house to show the property. All right. And the last thing you want to do is be the agent that has something listed where everybody that pulls up to show that property, they cringe. All right. And what I mean by that is, when you cringe, when you see that agent and you know how difficult it is, are you or are you not going to understand that your buyer's looking for a house and it doesn't have to be that house that they buy, and that your life could be 1,000 times easier if you went under contract with maybe an agent you don't know or an agent that you saw on the sign that you really love to work with? You see, the reality is that human nature comes into play. We have to understand that human nature is there and it's real. And again, the last thing I want you guys to do is have something sit around on the market because you're starting to be known as the bulldog in the industry. It's not that an agent won't show your house. It's that an agent won't sell your house. So there's a huge reason why when we go through this, in order for us to talk about a win-win, it's communication. It's being cordial, and it's in the biggest piece of negotiation. You take any negotiation class, the first thing they're going to teach you, or I should, maybe not the first thing, but the emphasis that they're going to teach you in that room is to keep your emotions out of this. All right? You got to keep your emotions out of this. And it's very hard. It's very frustrating. I love that Harry Davis is on here. He's a seasoned vet in the industry. And, he's a great guy who I'm going to be partnering up with this coaching program. And Harry can attest to this, I'm sure. When you want something to happen for your clients or for yourself, you can let emotions get the best of you. And that means you overspeak, you oversay things. You maybe not be projecting what you need to be projecting because it might be for your own personal vendetta. I don't know how many times I've been out there showing house after house after house, and I just wish that these people would just go under contract. I don't really care at this point. And so when I'm this close and an agent tells me something that I just don't think is right or don't want to get to, it's very hard to retract my emotions and go, we just got to get around this, right? So win-win is so important. And then the other side of that is the only way to really win-win is when you have both parties or both agents understanding that their emotions do not need to be in play. Harry, anything to chime in off of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the first things. In my past career, I took a negotiation class because I negotiated the Teamsters contract in Ohio, and that was the first thing they taught us was you got to leave the emotions at the door. Doesn't matter that you're going to get mad, and the other party could do something to make you mad, and you just have to continue to focus on why you're there. You're there to negotiate a contract to buy and sell a property. Nothing else matters. So Bruce is right on when he says that.
Bingo. That's a really good point too. If you guys even slip up just slightly, let's just say that you even make a notion or a motion toward the other side that they're getting to you and that they found a hot button for you, they're going to play on that, right? I think, if you have kids on this, you know that, right? When your kids find your hot button, they'll continue to press it because it's funny to them, because it works. And that's no different than the other side of it as well. So through going through negotiation, here's the other key kind of factor. I love this little image, okay? We keep talking about having our emotions not get the best of us, right? But here's what we gotta understand. We are the middlemen. We're the liaison of the information and the questions, and we're also kind of the coach in the game. So when you see this buyer's agent and listing agent, and we're talking about negotiations, think back to just the exclusive right to buy or the exclusive right to sell. At the very top of the page, you have to designate whether you're going to be the buyer's agent or the listing agent or transaction broker, right? And the way that I describe what a listing agent and a buyer's agent is that you're the coach in the game. So when I talk to my clients, I let them know that, hey, I'm the coach in the game, but I don't take the shots for you, right? It's just like coaching. When I coach with you guys one-on-one basis, I can show you how the game works. I can show you the technique and the form, but it's up to you guys to take those shots. It's no different than we're working with our buyer and seller. So keeping our emotion out of the game is so important because we should have none in them, right? We have emotion around our clients. We have the desire to see them win and succeed, but we also need to understand that if you see a coach on the sideline, they're very calm, cool, and composed until they don't need to be or until something causes them not to be. And then some of the biggest crybaby coaches out there are the ones that are highlighted on ESPN, are the ones that don't stick around very long as well in their industry or their field. And it's because they really show their poker face and they really show the other side what's their hot button, and the other side is going to do everything they can to depress that. So going back to this little model or this diagram, we're the liaison, we're the middleman, right? We're the coach in the game. We interpret what the other side's talking about. So for instance, if I'm the buyer's agent and a listing agent is coming to me and talking to me about whatever it is that they want to talk to me about, we have to understand that that's coming from the seller, right? And so what you want to do is you want to listen for keywords. You want to understand that if you're talking to that agent, you want to pick up on, is this really the information that's coming from the seller? Or is this the information that the listing agent wants to see and wants to hear? And feel free to call people out on this, all right? So for instance, everything that I say whenever a listing agent is talking to me and they start to get hot and heavy, remain calm, remain cordial, and listen to everything that they're saying. Write down notes, do whatever it is you can do to stay calm. Because the hot and heavier that the other side is, they expect you to get a rise with them. If you can stay calm and be that middleman and write down everything and then just say these couple of lines, right? This is how I calm down every time. You know what? Hey, I read you loud and clear. And to be honest with you, I'm just not one that speaks on behalf of my clients. So let me just take back this request and this information back to my clients and see what they say. And I'll get back to you, okay? I totally respect and understand what your clients are feeling or saying or acting or want to do. However, I can't make that decision for my buyers, and I hope you're not doing the same for your sellers. So let me get back to you here in a minute after I talk to my buyers, right? Every time you're in a sticky situation, every time that you are in a place where you're not understanding what's going on, or something's going over your head, or the other side's getting a little hot, pause and understand that you're just the liaison. So there's no reason for you to get worked up. Just take some notes, get off the phone. And if you need, give myself a call, give Harry a call, and we'll walk you through it. The other thing about it is when you're on the phone and you're just sitting there and you're going back and forth with another agent, tensions can get high, right? And if you've ever been in a relationship, you know that sometimes you just need to put it in the drawer for a day, meaning you need some time to just get away from that situation, calm down and think rationally, and then go back at it and call them again. And that's what we call negotiation, right? We have to remain calm, and I'm going to beat that like a dead horse, because there's no reason, according to this diagram, according to what we do, there's no reason to get upset or emotional around anything, because it's not our decisions, guys. The decisions are made between the buyer and the seller. So it's a little different. I love talking about negotiating the deal because, and Harry said it, as well, he took a class on negotiation. A class on negotiation in real estate is a little different than the negotiation class on for any other business, because usually you're negotiating direct to direct. We're negotiating for other people. And so there's a little bit of a different element, but still some of the same tactics. Okay. So I like to open with that and just have everybody understand that the last thing you need to do is get emotional. It's not your decision. And if you understand that, things will simply go much smoother and much better. Okay. By the way, just to reiterate here, I know that we're recording Ignite. We're going through this. You guys have to be lead generating every single day, right? I know I just skipped through this daily 10-4 stuff, but as we coach and as we train and as we go through, there's a reason why I open all of my calls and all of my sessions up with, how was last week, right? How was last week means where are you at? Where do you grade yourself on a day-to-day basis? Are you accomplishing what you need to accomplish? Because the reality is this stuff that we're not going to sit here and pause this video and have you make your calls on this recording is simply because you need to be doing it, right? 15 minutes here and there isn't going to cut it. If you're not doing this stuff, the hardest part about everything and the hardest pill to swallow, you're never going to get down to this section. This Ignite session is not going to mean jack diddly to you, because up here is where the daily 10-4 starts. Okay. So make sure you're going through that. Make sure you're doing it. Let's keep going. All right. Negotiating tips. I've mentioned quite a few of these just in talking with you. But we want to hit home on a couple of others that I've left out on purpose, right? Always be professional. Professional is calm, collective, cool. We've hit that like a dead horse. Remember your goal. Your goal is to get somebody into a home, okay? I love this bullet point number 2, as well as this bullet point number 4, all right? Refer back to motivation. Remember your goal. Motivation is the goal, all right? Or the goal is the motivation. Why are your buyers looking to do this? Why are your sellers looking to sell their home, right? In negotiation, we oftentimes get very, very tripped up in the minutia, in the very small details, right? Some of the smallest details in a relationship cause some of the most vocal and loudest fights that you've ever had. And what it really is it's not that small little detail. It's usually the compound effect. It's the buildup over time. So if you have a buyer or a seller who wants to nitpick the other side the entire time, just know that it's a matter of time before somebody loses sight on the end game. Mark my words, if somebody's nitpicking through the entire deal, one side or another is going to lose sight on the fact that the seller actually wants to sell the home and get out of their situation. And on the flip side, the buyer actually wants to buy the home and get into the home. So in negotiation, there's a two-way side, right? We keep talking about how we're interacting with this other agent, but the reality is that oftentimes we need to kind of enlighten or negotiate with our clients. And I don't like to use the word negotiate. I know this is what the class is called, but when we talk to our clients, there's a part of what we do where we educate them, we set standards and expectations around the market, and then we help guide or coach them through things. That's why I like to use the word coach as far as an exclusive, a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. Because if we're a coach in the game, the coach knows that the end game is to win the game. Or on the buyer or seller, the deal is to come to commencement, or everything is done, right? And so in order for us to kind of stick with everything, and as you go through negotiations, make sure you're asking your clients, as well as maybe even the other agent, or reminding them that the end game is to get you into a home. So for instance, let me just give you a very easy example. This happens a ton with a buyer and with a seller, to be honest with you. But when we go through inspections, you would not believe how on a $400, $500, let's call it a $300,000 property, a $500 detail point can really hinder or get in the way of things. All right. And what I mean by that is, I just got done doing a deal where my buyers wanted the HVAC, clean, service, and certified. Okay. It's about 100. I can find somebody to do it for about $170. The seller was willing to credit the buyer $300 because they didn't want to call the HVAC company and actually have the service performed. And so I knew that the other side wasn't necessarily seeing what we were trying to accomplish. They weren't seeing our goal behind asking the seller to clean, service, and certify the furnace. You see, $300 would allow my clients to do that. However, what we were asking for them to do is have somebody basically check it out and make sure it's sounding good. And if it's not, it needs to be corrected, repaired, or replaced. So a $300 credit to my buyer seems well and good because it's about double what it would actually cost them to have somebody come out and take a look at. But that wasn't the goal. The goal wasn't for us to get $300 or $150 or make the seller spend $150. The goal was to make sure that when my buyers get into the house, they have a sound working HVAC system. So we talked through it, and it was a very difficult conversation because the other side really could not understand why it was that we weren't willing to take more money. They kept offering us more money, $500, $600. My sellers just don't want to do this. I started to realize that the other agent was the one who didn't really have a HVAC resource in the area. They were from the Castle Rock area. They didn't have resources, vendors. They couldn't recommend this piece to their client. And so I made the recommendation. I took it upon myself to actually call and set up the actual HVAC inspection. And that simply was all it was. We had two different goals. The goal of the other agent was not to get in any sort of pickle or overpromise things to their sellers. And the goal for my buyer was to make sure that they got into a house without having a furnace that was bummed. But it was amazing to me that as soon as I offered that, the seller was absolutely on board. And one of those things is what I could tell is, my gosh, this other agent was really hindering this deal. One, I don't know if it's because they just don't know what they're doing, if they don't have a vendor, or whatever it was. They didn't have time to help their sellers out to find an HVAC company. But as soon as I recognized that there was a disconnect in what we were all trying to accomplish, we were all trying to get to the end game, and the other side, I felt like wasn't following exactly what I was looking to do. Once I finally took some things off their plate, once I kind of pieced everything together and understood that I think that they just didn't want to go through the burden and that I would be willing to take on the burden. Everything was good. Everything was fine. The furnace checked out. Luckily on this one, it could have been a different way. But the reality is that we need to make sure we always understand what is the end game, as well as what is the motivation behind what the request is. And so this is when I talk about listening empathetically, right? In negotiations, the reason why you have to stay calm and cordial and cool is not because you're afraid of the other side, getting upset and mouthing back at you and you get into an argument. You should have no fear around getting into an argument. The key is that when you're not calm, cool, and collected, you can't think right. You can't think straight. You can't think through things to get to that end game or refer back to that motivation piece. All right. That's why when you're with a spouse or when you're with someone and you get into a heated tiff, the majority of the time, if you guys just take 10, 15 minutes, an hour, sleep on it, you realize in the morning or the next day or whatever that it wasn't that big of a deal. And it's no different in negotiation, guys. It's no different. Remain calm, remain cool, and always look at the end game. Okay. Control.
And I always, Bruce, and I always
Yeah.
tell my clients on either side, or no matter who I'm working with, is you have to be realistic, right? I mean, you could on the seller side, you could want, you know, $50,000 more than the house is worth. On the buyer side, they want they want, you know, they want to pay the least amount of money, and they want this and they want that and they want the refrigerator and they want this. And I always tell them, let's take a step back and think, what's the most important thing you need out of buying that house, or what's the most important thing you need out of selling it, so that you can home in on one or two things and then focus on those. Anyway.
Bingo. Bingo. Focusing on one thing at a time. It's all there. I love it. Bullet point number 3, control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. If you create the anxiety in your clients or other parties, you're going to reduce your leverage of negotiation. So again, keeping yourself calm, cool, and collected is important, but even more so, your buyers or your clients will gravitate towards your emotion, anxiety, or stress. So what I mean by that is when you have an inspection, and when you have an inspection report that comes back, especially if you've never seen an inspection report, I mean, even the best homes have 30 to 40 pages. Sometimes some of the worst homes have 60 to 70 pages worth of an inspection report. The reality is that to anybody who has never seen one, whether it's 30 pages or 60 pages is all the same to them, right? And so the key is to not get your emotions or let your kind of anything portrayed to your clients, because they look to you as the professional and they look to you as the person or the voice of reason, all right? It's the same thing as if you go into a doctor's office and the doctor says, hey, look, you know, I hate to say this, Bruce, but you have cancer. Now, instead of focusing on this problem, I've got a solution for you. What are you going to do? You're going to most likely remain a little bit more calm than you would if a doctor comes in and says, Bruce, okay, we've got an issue here. You see, we've got cancer, and I think, you know, I'm kind of freaking out inside a little bit. You know, this is not something I've seen that goes well in my experience. This is not something that has been great for most people that have developed this type of cancer. You know, and we're going to work on a solution, but here today, I've really got nothing for you. I would definitely go home, call your loved ones, because there's a lot of unknown ahead of us, right? 2 different things right there. Same cancer, two different ways to relay it, right? It's maybe not a horrible analogy I just used, but do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? Be careful causing emotion where emotion isn't due. You never know when you have that buyer who sees a 60-page inspection report that looks at every single thing on there and says, oh, I can fix that in a weekend. That's no problem. That doesn't cost a whole lot of money. I've done that before. Versus you going, hey guys, look, this looks like a pretty awful house. My gosh, there's just so many things that need to be done to this home. You know, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know if I would go through with this, right? No, don't say that. Don't do that. Don't cause emotion where emotion's not due yet. If that's the emotion that they're causing, if that's what they come up with, if they see that it's a bad house, if they see it's something that they don't want to go through, then work with them to accomplish the goal of getting out of the contract, right? But if the goal has always been to get into a home and to buy at a good value, and the buyers still see that value, although there's those inspection items, then educate them on asking for the seller to help get through that and get that done. So the reality is that you don't know how people are, you don't know what they're capable of, and it's absolutely beyond you to make that determination between your clients. Okay, it's for you to tell them what it is and state facts and help them go through it. All right. Any questions? Cool, because this is so important, and I tell you, it more oftentimes than not, I watch agents get in the way of their own client, as well as portray what they want to see happen, and quite honestly, most often it's not even what their clients want to see. They just feel like bulldogging you through different things. So be careful in understanding who's saying what and what the actual motivation is behind things. All right. Listen more than talk. Don't hang up on an agent who's berating you. Don't hang up on somebody that's getting hot and heavy with you. Just let silence do the heavy lifting. Remain calm, cool, and collective. And you'll be surprised at how fast you might be able to turn somebody else's emotions around as well, right? If I have a buyer who absolutely wants to ask for everything under the sun during an inspection objection, and I've gone through and I've educated them on making sure that this is what they want, that they understand that this could cause some anxiety around the seller and that it is quite a larger list than we're used to using, but that's what they still want to do, I'm still going to send it. Now, when I get that call, and I know I'll probably get that call around what's actually important because there's just too much, there's just so much there, and a listing agent just starts hitting me with everything that this is ridiculous, this is the way the market works, none of this stuff is health and safety related. You name it, I've been berated up and down about inspection objections that I send. And I just let them talk, just let them do their thing, just understand and acknowledge and nod your head and smile and say, I totally get it. I totally get it. I totally get it. And then at the very end, just let them know that it wasn't your request and that you're only doing what your duties were to your buyer and that it's their job to go back to the seller and go through that list in a calm, cool, and collective manner and get back to you by the deadline. Stay calm, remain calm, and just let that other side spill it out because sometimes that's all they're doing is just getting out their frustrations. They may have a difficult seller on their hand and they're actually taking out the anger on you when they really want to take the anger out on their actual client. But they know they can't, and so they do it to you. So be careful and don't take anything personally. Just listen, talk less, and just be the middleman, be the liaison. Just let them know that you're going to communicate back and forth with each party, okay? Don't be attached to the outcome. I can't stress that enough. You guys simply understand that when you have a buyer under an agency agreement, if the contract falls apart, well, it sucks, but you got to go back out and find them a new house. You didn't lose the client. You lost the deal, right? Don't be attached to that outcome. Every time that you go under contract with a buyer, or every time you go under contract on your listing, understand that we get paid to have things fall apart. Just straight up honest with you. Our job is to keep things together. And if it was too easy, and if everything had a higher probability of closing on time and the first time around, just understand that there's no way in this world we would get paid what we do. We get paid to go through the crap. We get paid to keep our emotions in check. We get paid to counsel and console different people. And if we didn't have to do that, the amount of times that we have to do that, mark my words, we would not, the society and community would not pay us what they pay us. All right. We get paid that much because of those 10% deals that just go completely awry. So if you understand that, then that means you can't be attached to the outcome. Because if you're attached to the outcome, then that means that you don't have any realistic expectation of what actually happens in our industry. All right. If things are going way too well for me, then that means that I'm probably not likely to receive a raving review by the time we get down to the end of it. Because people that go through simplicity, your clients that have an easy time, they'll start to wonder why in the world you get paid so much. Sometimes it's the harder deals. Sometimes it's the ones that take the longest time. Sometimes it's the headaches where you actually receive better, what do you call that? I just said it. Well, anyways, recommendations. What am I looking for here? Yeah. What?
Review?
Yeah, reviews. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes the worst contracts and the worst things give you the best reviews. Sometimes the hardest deals that your clients remember, they remember you for life, and they always are looking to refer you business because they know how hard you work for them. But the reality of negotiation is that as long as you keep your emotions in check and you're not attached to the outcome, the reality is that you're not working any harder than anything else. You're being the voice of reason. All right. So that's kind of a good overall view of what happens as far as negotiation goes. But the key pieces is we got to keep our emotions in check, can't be tied to the outcome, as well as be the liaison, and don't let your personal vendetta get in the way of anything. It's not between you and them, it's between the buyer and the seller. Common points of negotiation. All right, we're going to kind of go through this just briefly and I'll kind of hit on it. Price, obviously, is a huge one. Terms, and number two, I mean, terms, you can talk about a litany of different things: closing costs, dates, inspections, different things of that nature. So let's go one by one, but I won't go too far in depth with this. Price, negotiation, right? You guys have heard of like the middle of the road, right? You go into negotiation, you come back at somebody hoping that whatever you're offering, the other side comes back in the middle. Have you heard of that? Somewhat. Let me give you an example. So if you, let's say the house has been sitting on the market, it's 400,000, and your buyers want to offer a little less. If you want to get the property at say 395, more often than not, people will look to make an offer around 390 to hopefully meet in the middle, right? At 395, because if you go in at 395, then the seller may or may not know that that's your end all be all, and start to offer maybe 397.5 and meet in that middle. So for me, and the tactic that I use is to not do that. If my buyers want to end at 395, I'm going to probably educate them to go in at 388 or 387. And here's why. I've learned that most people think around that half rule. And if you think around that half rule, what happens is at the same token, in the same breath, people don't feel like they've actually won. Okay. And so let me walk you through this. I go in at 388 or 387 because then I'm expecting the seller to meet me in half, right? If they do, fantastic. I actually just got my buyer a little bit more money than they were willing to spend. Or if they go in, maybe they won't meet in half, and maybe the seller will feel better about going in at 395, which was our end game this entire time. And you can use that as a leg up, saying, look, throughout negotiations, on inspections, through this, through that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we were really looking to settle around that 393, 394 range. We decided to give you 395 because that's what you came back to us with. We'd really like these things done, and we hope that you can recognize and see that we gave a little bit more than we wanted to on the original offer, which is why we're asking for these items. So if you'd like, we can do one of two things. We can maybe reduce price or have a concession to go back down to what we were actually really wanting to offer, or we can get these items accomplished. You see, sometimes you can use these different tactics in negotiation to give you a leg up down the road, right? So that's why I don't really want to hit on too many of these points individually. I want you to see how they all can work together down the road or in through the timeline, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So again, there's always an end game, right? There's always a goal in mind when you talk about negotiation, especially with price. Your buyers have a goal. They're going to tell you what their max dollar is, and you can educate them on going in right at their max dollar and standing your ground. You can go in and say, hey, look, the majority of times people usually counter back around half of that, so we can go around that. I use that last tactic. I go a little bit lower than what we really want to offer, because maybe not, the seller does counter us in half and we actually get it for a little less than what my buyers would be willing to, or they counter us where they want us to be, and I can make the seller feel like they've got us. So that way, during the contract, during the progression of everything, I have another leg up on negotiations if something else comes up during that time. Okay. Terms, same thing. So this is another cool piece, and we talked about it in making the offer or going through there, right? When we were talking in that Ignite series or that Ignite class, we went through, and Darby was my guinea pig, so I appreciate her being back on here. We went through a couple different scenarios, right? I can't remember exactly, so bear with me. I'll just make up a very similar situation. When you make an offer, when you're competing against different things, terms can really come into play. But a lot of times it's a conjunction of money and terms. So for instance, if there's a house listed at 400,000 and your buyer wants to make an offer at, it's listed at 400,000 and the seller would prefer 2 months of rent back into the home, 2 months back in the home after closing. What is the better offer? $410,000 and asking and giving them 2 months back in the home for free, or $420,000 and charging the seller the amount of the mortgage payment, right? So let's call it $100 a day, right? So $100 a day times 60 days, you're at close to $6,000, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at $6,000. So in reality, is the 420 offer better or worse than the one that says, here's 410 and I'll give it to you for free? Numerically speaking, the 420 offer is better because the seller's going to the seller's more likely to net $4,000 than taking 410 and having a rent back for free, right? But on paper, psychologically speaking, we got to talk about this other piece. Psychologically speaking, the seller might just want to go with the offer at 410 because they made it so much easier on them. It's just free, right? So you got to be careful in the way that you communicate, in the way that you go back and forth, because you have to always expect that the other agent that you're working with is not thinking through that process as well. If you have another agent who really hasn't gone through multiple offer situations, who lets their seller kind of decide and make them and sway them on every single emotion that they have, they may not realize that the offer at 420 is actually going to net the seller potentially another $4,000 for the same timeline. And so when I ask you guys what offer is better, it depends. The answer is it depends. I've had plenty of sellers take less money just to get my offer done because of whatever my buyer wants to do or offer. Heck, gosh, I can't remember the person's name, but we just had somebody in our office go under contract $8,000 lower than the competing offer. And do you guys know why that happened? Because the sellers had a Ring doorbell and saw the single mother with her daughter come up, and our agent was showing them the house. And then when they submitted the offer, the other agent made note to the other agent saying, hey, look, I got a single mother here. She's really looking to get into this house. This is what she can do. Quite frankly, I really need to get her into a house. And to be completely honest with you, this is the house for them. I know you've probably heard this 100 different times, but I hope that you guys can see by the different cameras in the house that these folks are here and they're vested, and these people need to get into this house. So without writing a buyer's letter and all of this other jazz that we used to do, take care. The agent said, this is from so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And the seller said, hey, is this that from that lady with the daughter that we saw on the camera? And said, as a matter of fact, it is. It sounds like they've been looking for a house for a while, and that they'd really like this house. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I hear that all the time. You guys make the decision of how you guys want to. And they took it $8,000 less because they wanted somebody who was going to appreciate the house. So understand that through negotiation, sometimes you guys, the communication piece is the most important, but then going through and understanding where price and terms come into play. Come to find out, when I was very surprised that happened. So I looked up the property. It looks like the sellers own that thing in cash. There hasn't been a mortgage on it in 23 years. So for them, $8,000 to have somebody else go into the house that they've been in for the last 23 years was probably pretty cool for them, and that's why they took it. So understand that there's a delicate balance in negotiation as well, right? We need to relay information. We can't give up our poker hand, but yet sometimes popping in these different types of things can really help out. But on the flip side of it, make sure you understand that through negotiation, you're not the one giving up that poker hand. You're not the one selling somebody else's motivation, right? There's a good reason out there why good listing agents will not tell a buyer's agent why someone is selling their home. Quite honestly, if you're a listing agent, you should not be telling anyone why somebody's listing their home, whether or not they're actually looking at that home or not. If it's just a friend that you're talking to or somebody else down the street, don't let people know why the seller's selling their home unless they've given you direct permission. Because what you do is you can give up a lot of information that way. Well, the seller's moving because they've got to go back because they've got a sick relative and they're terminally ill and they need to get rid of this house quick because they got to go. Well, you just told the buyer, hey, look, the seller's in an emotional state. They don't really give a shit and they want to get on with their life and they need to get going. So offer whatever you want, right? And at a weak moment, people make weak decisions. So be careful. So
Yeah, I always say I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I say that and I elaborate a little further too. I say, look, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I've learned throughout this, throughout doing this, that the less motivation that I know, the less I'm likely to give up to you guys. And I apologize, but here's what I know is important. Obviously, price is always important with the seller. And in this situation, my sellers are looking for this, or this, whatever it may be, right? It's an easy way to circumvent that conversation. And it's, just don't be the agent that says, I really can't tell you. Because then that just kind of gets emotions riled up and that gets people to think why. Yeah. Bye, Ann. Take care. Okay. Any questions on these? I don't want to beat these little terms like a dead horse.
Bruce, I was always taught too that don't talk your way in and out of a sale. In other words, as a negotiator, you just want to state the fact and then stop. And if people want to be silent, let them be silent. I've been in meetings where nobody says anything for 2 to 3 minutes, and it's a game. They're waiting. The best thing you can do is just like Bruce said, you just don't want to give out too much information. So you just silence is okay.
Yeah, silence is fine. It's our human nature and it's our society that feels like that silence isn't fine. It's been fine for years. It's just our new society with lights and glitz and glam and patios and out to eat and restaurants all close together that makes it feel like that. I promise you that. There's always noise in our world right now. Always. Right? If you live in a subdivision, there's always dogs barking and lawns being mowed. If you live downtown, there's always street cars and streets and traffic. We're not used to silence. And so it lifts the heaviest, especially in a society that doesn't hear it that often. All right, the 3 P's of real estate, right? There's so many 3 P's of real estate. I love it. But in negotiations, it's prepare, present, and position yourself, okay? So when we go through preparing, again, know the goal, know the outcome. You should not be negotiating or saying anything on somebody else's behalf unless you have a clear understanding of what needs to be accomplished. Rule number 1. Number 2, know your client. All right. And I love this. Know your client, because here's the key. I've had plenty of times where my client will say something to me, clearly project that that's their goal, but take other actions to tell me otherwise. So let me slow that down. Sometimes you have clients who've been in this game. They're investors. They know how to negotiate better than you do, but they need you as their agent because they simply don't have a license. And sometimes you will have a client who will project a goal to you and then not act in any way, shape, or form in accordance with that goal. So Let me give you an example. I just had this happen several months ago. Had a gentleman comes to me and he says, I want to buy this house. I look it up. And this guy is probably, I don't know, 27, 28 years old. Says, I want to buy this house. He sends me the property. It's a $1.4 million listing. And I know that he's a used car salesman. So instantly I'm thinking, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. So I look at the listing, and I see on there that the listing agent is requiring a lender letter to go show this house. So I asked my client, give me a lender letter, we'll go show this house. Now, it wasn't me who was asking, guys. This kind of goes away from negotiation, but this kind of goes into just working with clients. I didn't text him back and say that they're requiring a lender letter. I took a screenshot of the broker remarks that said lender letter is required before approval for showings. 10 minutes later, he sends me a lender letter from a lender that I know very well. And so I trusted it all day. I went into the property and something seemed off. This gentleman basically proceeds to tell me that this isn't the first house that he's looked at, and that he's been working with another agent, or he said I've been looking for a home for the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I've only seen 3 houses. My agent didn't want to stick around with me, and I really enjoyed selling you a car a couple years back. So I decided to give you a call. If you're willing to kind of stick with me for the long haul, that's what I'm looking to do. As far as this house goes, I do like it. There's some things that I just don't care for. And he started mentioning them. And then when I started asking him what he was looking for, this is where he tripped me up totally, completely. He was so vague. He wants a nice neighborhood. He wants to be under 1.5 million. And he wants to have a place for his kid, his 2-year-old kid, to be able to kind of run around, ride the bike, and not have to worry about it. So he's tired of the in-town track home build type of living. Okay. And so throughout this entire time of me working with him, he's telling me this is what he wants, this is what he needs, this is what he's going with. And then I find out there's a girl in the picture. Didn't mention it at all. I didn't ask. He's a very intelligent individual. And I start to kind of get this vibe that there's somebody else. There's another voice of reason. Sometimes when I ask him questions, he has to get back to me. But I'm talking to this gentleman who makes decisions very, very quickly. He's one of the smartest individuals I've ever met. And I think he made a lot of money dabbling in the stocks because he just has a brain for it. But I could get, there's something that wasn't aligning, right? We would go see a house and he wouldn't like it for X, and X reason. But the last time we didn't like a house, it was for a different reason. And we found something that had every reason that he wanted. And so I finally figured out that his motivation was to surprise his new fiance with basically a house. He was riding this delicate line of, I would never go through this. He was trying to find a house that they both would love and like, because the kiddo that he has is not with her, and that she doesn't want to live in the house that he was with another woman in when they had the kid before she came into the picture. I'm telling you, it took so long for me to just recognize that the path of what he was telling me just was not lining up. And when I finally started prying and digging in more, guess what happened? I showed that guy 3 houses. He had been looking for 2 years. And I put together a search based upon what he was telling me and based upon our intuition. And it was totally off because he had his own search wrong. After I finally asked a bunch of questions, I put together a different search for him. A property hit the market. We went out and made an offer on it, $75,000 over list price, because we were in a competing offer situation on $1 million house. We got the offer. And this whole time, I thought for sure he had to use lending to obtain the house. He could have used cash the entire time. He just wanted to simply use the great interest rate so he could keep his money invested. But it was going through and understanding that my client was not actually clearly presenting the end goal or the end game, and that it's up to us to be able to start to recognize that. And as a professional, call them out, right? And I hate to say call them out that way, but part of negotiation is you got to know what you're negotiating on behalf of, right? So be careful. It just happened to me. It was a very odd situation. And I know that just telling you guys through here, you guys don't even understand all the nuances, but the reality is that I could have been that other agent trying to help this guy find a home for the next 2 years and still not coming to it. They love it. They're happy. And they just sent me 2 listing referrals because apparently he owns 2 houses in town that he now is going to liquidate. And he was just saving them so that way he always had a backup plan of where to live. Crazy. But without asking more questions, I would have never known that entire situation. Think ahead. Anticipate what the other party wants out of the negotiation. We just talked about that with the pricing example, right? If I know my buyer wants $395, and I know that traditionally speaking, a seller is going to try and maybe cut in half or do something like that, then I like to go with the method of $388 instead of $390 if I want to end at $395. So always anticipate what the other party wants out of negotiation.
Yeah.
Especially.
Sorry, Bruce.
No, don't be sorry.
On top of that, just because we're telling you not to give out too much information doesn't mean all realtors don't. So it's okay to call that seller's agent if you're representing the buyer and say, hey, tell me a little bit about the house, how come the sellers are getting rid of it? You might find out some really good information that can help you with that offer. Because sometimes there's agents out there that'll tell you everything about their client. So, it's like Bruce just said. So you want to, not only do you want to try to know your client, but the more you can find out about the other client, the more opportunity you have to put in a really good offer that they're going to grab.
Bingo. That's so true. You can get an agent to overspeak the majority of the time.
Yep.
The majority of the time. I'm telling you, I've ran into agents that have all these certifications through negotiation. You just look on their email designations. Anybody that gets their designations, it's a nice privilege to go through those classes and they put them on their email signatures. You would not believe the amount of people that go through the toughest negotiation classes that still give up almost everything.
And something that Jesse taught me. So right now we've been talking about sellers who already have an existing home. What about a new home? Mm-hmm. Well, you want to find out as much about what that builder has done over the last few that he's sold. You can go online and find out what houses were sold for, what people got for in other words, that builder gave them $10,000 off the price. They gave them this, they gave them that. Be surprised what you can find out on a builder's home as well and negotiate because you have so much more information for your client. And a lot of times that, a buyer's thinking, oh, a builder's not going to give me anything, blah, blah, blah. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, so, be careful. Yeah, exactly what Harry said. New builds are a great example. When I first got into the industry, I was always told they don't negotiate. Well, then I started seeing sometimes they would have these quote unquote Labor Day specials. They would give away a free refrigerator, washer and dryer if you made a contract that weekend, right? Yeah. Well, I started seeing that and I started going, wait a second, that's money. In the world of a buyer, it's a refrigerator and a washer and dryer, but in the world of a builder and a business, it's financial, it's money. So if my buyer is taking their refrigerator and their washer and dryer from the house that I'm selling for them and they don't need it, then it's within my right to ask the builder, hey, look, we don't need the Labor Day special, but if we contract this weekend, I'd like to see if you guys can get permission for another $7,500 off of base price.
Yep.
Right? And it works sometimes.
Or put a deck in the backyard for me because I don't need your washer and dryer.
I don't need your washer and dryer. Put the landscaping in the backyard, something like that. So exactly. Be careful making any decisions or assumptions based upon other people's past history. And what I mean by that is, I give out a lot of advice. And one of the key pieces of my advice is if there's a 1% chance that something could happen, my advice to you is ask. I think, Melissa, you've probably heard me say it multiple times. If you question if the question is, should I? The answer is most likely yes, unless it's a legal issue or trouble, right? If you think, should I, then what you're really just bouncing off of me is, if I do this, is there any repercussions? There's no repercussions on asking a new build to take money off of the sales price of the home. Most new builds don't tell you this, but some new builds, their fiscal year ends in October. And sometimes September is some of the greatest times to go under contract on a build. Or sometimes it's March, so that way they can close it out by October. Thinking through or being prepared, this is all part of that being prepared piece. If you can dream it, if you can think of it, then ask it. And if it's something that might be legal, bounce it off myself, and I'll let you know if you're going to get in trouble for asking. But I would say that 95% of all questions that you could ask, if they're just questions, can't get you in trouble. Okay. No, that's really good. I forget what I was going to say here. Maybe we hit it here. Clear expectations. Clear expectations. Again, when we talked about how to win with buyers and how to win with sellers in those Ignite classes, the key piece that I've said over and over and over and over again is go 3 questions deep, meaning set clear expectations, right? If you continue to go questions deep with your clients, you're going to understand what their expectations are. And if you set those and those clients set them for you, you're going to be able to better prepare yourself. The other key piece is on the flip side of it is not only just asking your clients questions around their expectations, but setting their expectations around what the market's doing, around how new builds work, around how they operate, right? It's a lot different conversation than when you say, hey, you know, if we look at new builds, they're not likely to do anything over what they present to us, versus, hey, look, you know, I'll be happy to ask. More often than not, they may or may not do anything for us, but I think it's perfectly valid to ask. Let's figure out if we can see if there's any sort of, you know, any sort of sale going on, anything that we can think of that the new build might want to make a deal with us around. So setting every expectation, going through every example, every scenario in your head of every outcome is the only way to process and set expectations around different things, right? We talk about all the time. If a buyer wants to go out and buy a house in today's market and they want to go in $20,000, $30,000 under list price just because they're looking to make a deal, then I have to know what their expectations are. Is their expectation to make a deal, or is their expectation to get into a home? Because if it's to get into a home, then I'm not going to work with them if they're going to continually put $20,000 to $30,000 low ball offers out there. If their expectation is to get a deal, I'm probably going to refer that business out to another agent, because that's just not my job. My job's not to help people make deals. My job is to help people get into homes. So make sure that you have a clear understanding of what you expect out of your client, as well as what they expect out of you. And if those two match, then work with them. And because what's going to happen is you're just preparing yourself for negotiation through the long run. Okay. Be informed. Be informed. Before making an offer or counter offer, it's good practice to speak with 2 other agents. So bounce things off of me. This is exactly why Harry and I, so Harry's the Loveland coach, and Harry and I will be basically combining forces for all 3 market centers. But whenever we talk with people, whenever we go through different things, the reason why we say lean into us, tell us early and often what you're doing and what your activities are. Whether or not you have a question, make sure that you're always informed. And the only way that we can help inform you is to understand what you're going through. So when we say lean into us and tell us early and often when you're going to go out and show properties, if you think you might be writing an offer that night, we can be at the ready to help you out. So it's good to ask different agents different questions, because every time that you think that you have it figured out, there could be another way to skin that cat that could be better in that situation. And so if you want that, always reach out and ask. That's why I love Keller Williams. I love that we have an open door policy. And I love that the culture that we create allows you guys to reach out to other agents. You guys know top agents will reach out to a new agent just to see if they need help for the day. They don't know if you need help or not. So reach out to them. And if we need to connect you with some of those top agents, we'll do that. Harry?
Because remember, you're new, right? So you want to use that team. And I always tell agents, if somebody asks you about how much experience you have, say, you wouldn't believe the team that I have at Keller Williams. Because remember, your whole goal is to get them the most for either the house they want to sell or the house they want to buy, right? You want to give them the most. So who cares that you had to go get Bruce to help you get through that? That client doesn't know that. That client just knows you were sharp and got them that deal. And if they ever ask, you say, I got a wonderful team at Keller Williams.
Bingo. This just goes right along with being informed. Obey the laws, right? Obey the laws. 95% of all your questions is most likely yes if you suspect it. There are times, though, where things became illegal. There are times where different laws, regulations, rules change. You guys, I don't know if anybody knows this on here, but if you look on the NMLS, I'm a licensed mortgage loan originator. I went through that class because I wanted to know more about lending, and I wanted to understand what it is that, I want to understand why it's such a different designation between lending and the real estate world. And it's I'm glad I went through it and I learned a lot that will stay with me. But the biggest thing that I learned is that lending regulations can change at almost any time. So no matter what you think you know about lending, no matter how sure you are, no matter how much that exact same scenario went through the last deal that you just did, never, ever, ever speak on behalf of a lender or another professional in our industry, because it's going to really tick you off when somebody does that for you. When you have a lender educating the buyer on how to make the offer or how to formulate the offer to win it, and it's not at all what you would do, it's going to frustrate you to the core because they're not in that professional space. So I know we're talking about obeying the laws, but the key with obeying the laws is, one, you only need to keep current on what we do. Don't try and keep current on lending and title, but also don't try and be a know-it-all and basically state things that you think you might have known from the past. Things change all the time. So lean into us. Just same thing with being informed. Know the documents inside and out. There's a reason why on all the national and state exams that contracts are the killer. Contracts are the hardest piece or the hardest segment to get through. And it's because if you know the documents inside and out, most likely, one, you're going to have an upper hand on the other agent. I cannot stress this enough. It's mind-boggling to me that in an industry of our size, the only thing that we have to go through each year is the annual commission update or the contracts update if there is one. I don't understand why there's not an annual contracts update class that's mandatory as well as a contracts class that's mandatory. But we need refreshers. We need different things. For example, I've talked to plenty of veterans in our industry that had no idea that there's this one change this year that happened in our contracts with the HOA documents. If HOA documents are not delivered by the time that the HOA documents delivery deadline happens, that it's okay, that you don't have to amend the date, and that our new version of this contract says that if the HOA documents are delivered after the HOA documents delivery deadline, that the termination deadline no longer applies, and the buyer instantaneously has 10 days to review. On the 10th day is their basically new termination deadline. I talked to so many different agents in our office, outside of our office, that all do hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals, and they didn't even know that that changed this year, right? So I cannot stress that enough. If you know your contracts and your documents inside and out, you're just going to set yourself way better for negotiation. You're not going to question if somebody's trying to pull one over on you. If you know it inside and out, then that means you know you can talk on the subject, right? It's just like public speaking. That nobody loves public speaking, but the people that are really, really, really good at it study the material. They practiced over and over again. And so this is my little plug for contracts class. As our market centers kind of all kind of merged together with training platforms and different things. You guys got to know that Harry on here, as well as Jesse Ingall, they both teach a contracts class on Tuesdays from 9 to 11. It's on Sherry's email every single week. And that class, what they do is it can take 9 to 10 weeks. And they go through section by section of the contract to buy and sell real estate, residential. They go through the exclusive right to buy, and they go through the exclusive right to sell, and then all of the common disclosures that happen as well. However long it takes them to get through all of those things is when they start over and they rotate it back around. So it's not a class to go to just once. And there's a reason for that, guys. I take 2 contracts classes every year. Every year. And I feel like I know them like the back of my hand. But I'll be honest with you, every time I take a contracts class with a new instructor or somebody different, it's amazing to me to see how many interpretations of the contract there are and how many interpretations are not wrong. It's just simply some things haven't been in the court of law yet to figure out. And other things, there's different ways to spin it, and there's different ways to type in different things in different manners. So if you guys watch the video of me filling out contracts, just know that that's my way. There's plenty of other ways to do it. There's a gentleman in our coaching program who does things quite a bit differently than me. And we've had a very long discussion about it. And everything that he does is super compliant. And I'm super happy that he understands that. So know the documents inside and out. Public speakers only feel comfortable or only look like they're comfortable because they know the material. You're only going to feel comfortable if you know the material as well. All right. I like to look at this scenario. I like this. This is a little bit of a group interaction here. We don't do a whole lot of this, but I will need somebody to probably chime in. I'm just going to read this out loud. You're representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her present property. Like any first-time home buyer, she's looking for you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175,000. The house appears to have evidence of a roof leak and is listed as is and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she still has a number of student loans to pay off, and she wants to write an offer for $155,000. There's been quite a bit of activity on the listing. What are some things that you'd ask your client? Go ahead.
Are you willing to go over 155?
I like that. What are you looking to gain with that knowledge, Brady? I know where you're going.
Like what she can afford, exactly. Like what's her top end?
There you go. There you go. So instead of, are you willing to go over 155, it's, well, I know that, see right here, your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she still has a number of student loans to pay off. So when you say as low as possible, well, there's 2 different scenarios here, right? There's low as possible, and then there's what is still comfortable for her, right? If it low as possible is what? Like is 0, right? So of course, everybody wants to keep their payments as low as possible. So that would be an easy question I'd ask my client. What would be a comfortable monthly payment for your mortgage, as well as insurance and taxes? If there's an HOA, what would be something that you could still pay? And I don't want you to spend your top dollar, but I need to know where your threshold is. I need to know where that line in the sand is. Is it $1,500 or is it $1,550 a month? Where's that line? Because then we can formulate with the lender around where your highest offer is. See, most buyers will throw out 155 because they have a preconceived notion of where their payment is. But whenever I have somebody not give me their actual payment along with an offer price, I know they haven't went through that exercise yet. So good job, Brady. That's definitely a question I would ask. What are some other questions you'd ask?
If she has extra cash to repair or replace the roof if it needs to be.
Bingo. What are you going to do about the roof? So I understand that you want to spend a little less than list price because it's listed as is and has a roof leak. But you see, the reality is that the loan isn't going to basically repair the roof leak. So it's going to be something you're going to have to tackle. Are you prepared to tackle that? Or do we need to give the seller maybe a little bit more money and ask them to repair the roof leak. Because that could be something that works out well too. A lot of buyers think that they can basically put in an offer and think that the lender will give them money back at closing to fix those items. There's only one loan out there that I know of that will do that, and it's simply a very hard loan to get into, and it's called an FHA 203K rehab loan. FHA 203K rehab loan. Now, if you guys understand what FHA is, you understand that an investor can't use that loan. Because an FHA loan is for actual primary residence, actual people buying the home as their property or their residence. So it's not for an investor, but you look into that for a potential buyer who doesn't have the money to fix the roof, and maybe her payments would align with 175 if the roof was fixed. So going through here and going through this scenario, everything that you guys and I are masterminding around, this is that be prepared part. This is that area where you got to get all those different pieces of information. Don't take all of this as face value. Don't take it as she wants to offer 155 because that's where her payments are well at, right? Good. All right. So we've gone through the prepared phase. Any other questions? Any other key points on that? Any questions you guys think of? I think we hit the majority, I think. Okay. Now presenting it to the other agent or presenting it to the other side, right? You guys call the other agents. Quit sending emails and text messages when you want to start figuring out things. People do not overtalk in an email. People don't give up their poker face in an email. They have too much time to think through the text and the dialogue. Now, I'm going to say that to you because when you're negotiating, you're going to the other side, I'm going to tell you to call. When you're on the other side, when I'm on a listing side of things, I oftentimes am the agent that everyone hates. And the reason for that is because I'm a talker. Meaning, if I have a listing that goes live and it's like at a $300,000 price point and I know I'm going to receive multiple offers, then one, I'm going to know I'm going to be on the phone quite often. Or two, I'm going to politely, let it go to voicemail if I'm too busy or whatever that looks like. And I'm going to basically provide answers from somebody's voicemail and maybe in an email so I can have time to think about it. I don't overspeak. So understand that when we go through this class, there's two sides to it. For you, for presenting your type of negotiation, your offer to different things, you want to call, build that rapport, and more people will overtalk than they will in an email or text form. Right? Pay attention to nonverbal cues. Gosh, this is so important. There's nonverbal cues you guys can hear about over the phone too. A question that should seem very simple to answer and an agent pauses, that means something, right? Nonverbal cues are so important, so important. Give me some examples of some things you guys can think of nonverbally when you're talking with somebody and going through negotiations. If you can't think of anything, that's okay. I'll give you some examples. I know Darby's got some. Darby's a heavy listing agent. She goes through negotiation quite often. What are some things that you and I have picked up from different agents just in you and I talking about different things?
When people cross their arms, that's one sign of them backing off and saying.
Are you talking on the phone?
Either or. Harry's not wrong. Crossing your arms is a big one.
Yep.
I think the pauses always get me. It's like they're thinking about it, and I know they're thinking about it. So like, I know that they're kind of bluffing sometimes when they're doing that. They're trying to like respond and think how they're going to respond versus they already know their client's answer.
Bingo. If somebody knows their client's answer and have already talked about it, you're going to hear things like, well, actually, this is something my clients and I have already talked about, and here this is. Or if they haven't talked about it to their clients, then they really should just immediately say, hey, you know what? Look, that's a good question. Let me call my clients and get back to you. If they pause, then they probably start to make up bull crap, or they probably are starting to negotiate on behalf of their seller, and I'm going to call you out for it. I'm going to say things simply as, hey, you know, it sounds like that, you know, kind of came to your mind right there. Is that something that you're going to go back to your client and talk about, or is that something your client has told you about? I'm very good at calling people out and making sure that it came from their client's mouth and not just theirs. Because remember, part of our negotiation is just slightly different. We have to be representing our buyers and sellers in the best way possible, and that's not speaking on their behalf. So be careful. Sometimes pauses are great. Sometimes they're just thinking, but oftentimes if it's a direct question to their client and they pause, yeah, more often than not, they're speaking on behalf of their client.
Two things. Bruce said it more than once. It's okay to say that you have to, it's a great question. I'm going to get back to my client. That's a great line. And it also gets you out of a situation where you really, it might be a sticky situation and you just want to be able to think about it more. So why not just say, great question, Bruce. Hey, listen, let me get back to you or talk to my client and go with that. We'll go over it with them and then I'll get back to you.
Bingo. And then if I get that, do you guys know what I do when I'm ready to communicate back with the other side? I send them an email.
Yeah.
I send them an email because again, if I'm going back to my clients to answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions, then the answer can be in an email format. I don't really need to have a back and forth dialogue. Or if I do need to have a back and forth dialogue, I'll probably give my answers in an email, call them, and when they say they want to start to discuss it, I'll say, hey, it's actually in your email, so that way you can provide it to your sellers or your buyers. I was actually calling you about X, Y, and Z, not A, B, and C. Written communication is huge, especially in negotiation, but when you're the one trying to find out other pieces of information, make that call. Big difference there. Nonverbal cues are huge, very, very huge. Pauses are there. The other thing that you're going to notice about nonverbal cues, and I almost call this verbal cues, is when somebody's trying to make up something, they stutter, they stammer, they pause, they go, you see, and they're thinking about it. Like you can tell when somebody's thinking when they're talking. Those are verbal cues. If it's a direct question that has a direct answer, then it needs to be a direct answer. If it's not, it's probably BS spilling out of their mouth, and then just politely say, hey, look, it doesn't sound like you and your clients have talked about that particular thing in full detail. I hear what you're saying, but would you do me the favor and just ask your clients for clarification on the response that you just gave me? It really makes some people think. There's a lot of agents that just want to get off the phone and just get through negotiation and just get the job done. And honestly, just not represent their clients on the best behalf.
You could tell when they're fishing.
What?
Too. You could tell when they're fishing. Like, well, do you think your clients?
Yep.
Especially as a listing agent, when I hear the buyer's agent, like, do you think? What do you think? I'm just like, nope, we're standing firm. Like, that's where my clients are at. And no, we're standing firm. Because you could tell that they're not sure about even how they're questioning it.
Mm-hmm.
Versus saying, hey, my clients want to come in with A, B, and C. It's more like, you think?
And see, by you saying that, Darby, I can tell that you prepare. You literally go through the process of understanding what your expectations are for your clients as well as yourself. That's great.
Absolutely. Because I want to take the
And you
emotion
have
out of it.
confidence.
Yeah.
And just
Brings
that the way she said it and she was firm about it has confidence. I'm up on it. I know my stuff. I know what my clients want. Boom.
And then when Darby has an agent like myself call her out and say, okay, great. I hope that's your seller's response and not yours. You can say, yeah, we actually talked about it last night. Listen, keep quiet. We already talked about that. Keep quiet when you present the offer, right? When you're presenting something, let silence do the heavy lifting. You don't need to beat around the bush. I can't stand when people are like, well, my clients want this. because of this, 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 and this, and this, and this, right? No. My clients are looking for this, right? Because as soon as you start explaining why they're looking for this is when you start to overspeak, because you're starting to justify it. You're starting to sell it to the other side. If you need to sell it to the other side, make sure you have that ready. Don't go on a clamoring, just spew of words just because you weren't prepared for silence. Let silence do that heavy lifting.
And I always say it's important to my clients. I don't say, oh, they need it for this, they need it for that. I go, it's just very important for my clients.
Mm-hmm. Listen carefully. Oh, that's so good, Harry. It's what's important to my clients. So in my negotiations, I got called out. I just bought a house in March, and when I was going through negotiations with it, my down payment, I'm not a 20% guy. My down payment is the base minimum that I can have, and then I have a method of paying down my principal to get out of mortgage insurance. So on my paper, it doesn't look like I have a lot of money to do anything with it. And so going throughout negotiations and going through all of it, that's the way things were portrayed to the other side, because it's important for me not to overspend, because it's going to be an investment property when I'm done with it. But long story short, literally at the closing table, because this was, we closed a week before the shutdown happened, and I'm across the table at the closing table, and the seller looks at me dead in the eyes and goes, wow, I had no idea, and I don't understand why you were so nitpicky on certain items throughout this entire thing. And I was very prepared for her to call me out, because she was so hard to work with. There was about 5 different instances that I just started spewing to her at the closing table about why I acted the way I did, and that I understood the way she was acting. And she did not even blatantly remember some of those points that she was so stern about and made my life so difficult. It was one of the worst negotiations of my entire life. She was so difficult to go through that transaction with. There's still sometimes I pull up to that house and I'm just like, I want to make sure that by the time I'm done with it, nothing in that house resembles that lady. But it was quite incredible how she called me out, and how this entire time I had painted this picture in her mind about who I was. And that was not me at all. And that's when I realized the painted picture was from her agent, and he had a heck of a time with her too. But anyways, the reality is that we can't know, we can't understand what everybody's thinking and doing. And that when you're on that other side, people are always going to pry into your world to try and figure it out. So stay firm, understand and have clear expectations, and let silence do that heavy lifting. We already talked about staying calm. We already talked about focusing on the customer's needs, right? That's that clear understanding of the direction and the motivation. What is the outcome? What is the end game? I need to get to the end game. This little piece right here in the middle, this little hurdle, this isn't the end all be all. If I don't win this, does that mean I get to the end game? If I win this, does that still mean I get to the end game? You don't want to screw a deal over a I can't stand when deals fall apart for $500 on a $400,000 house. It makes no sense to me. And that's when I know that for a fact, 2 agents are letting the emotions get the best of them. They're allowing their clients to let their emotions get the best of them. And it's never going to work if no one can keep a level head. Give your offer the best chance. You guys, this is also very important, right? And what I really think this means is I like this, avoid indicating to the other side if you believe that is less than a grateful offer, right? There's twofold to that. Because people can't keep their emotion out of this game, be careful with what you do. And here's what I mean by that. If there's a house listed for $500,000 and you have a buyer who wants to go in at $400,000, but they're perfectly fine with paying $475,000, make sure that they understand that that's not the best offer they need to put forth, because there's a mind game in the middle of things. If you give a seller a $400,000 offer on a $500,000 price point, most likely your counter is going to be nowhere near where you actually want to end, because you just ticked off the other side. Be careful. Don't let your clients talk you into an offer that you can see forward down the road or forward down the future with. And what I really mean by that is if you go in too low on an offer, the chances of the selling side countering you where you actually want to be is so much less, right? People want to work or negotiate with the reasonable people out there, right? There's no reason to negotiate on something that's never going to come to fruition. So on a $400,000 offer, if I'm the selling agent, I'm going to tell my sellers to offer them $497. Counter them at $497 and say, until you're ready to actually have a decent conversation or negotiation, we're not happy to work with you.
Yeah, and the other side of that, my very, very first clients, they were convinced they could come $80,000 under, and I told them, I mean, I have to present it, but I'm telling you, we might make them mad. Not only did we make the seller mad, the agent never got back to me, nor would she ever call me back to say, what did they say? I just didn't hear. I was like ghosted from that woman. It was like almost like we offended them. So Bruce made some good points there.
Yes, you will offend people, and there's the reality is we call these transactions, but a transaction is numerical. A transaction is cut and dry. That cut and dry piece of this transaction only happens at the end at the closing table. The rest of it, it's a game. We are playing one of the largest games in the world. And what I mean by game is it's cut and dry. There's numbers, there's emotions, there's two different sides, there's two different ideologies. I mean, we have two people negotiating that aren't even in our industry. So it's up to us to make sure that the people that we're representing through these negotiations understand that we're the professional. They have to understand that they're the ones actually negotiating, and that if they were put into our shoes, what would they do? So sometimes I ask my clients like that. And sometimes, like Harry says, you just have those people that would say, I need it for $80,000 less. And I know for a fact that it's going to tick a seller off. I have to have that conversation with them and let them decide whether that's still something they want to do. And then I have to decide whether I still want to work with them. Good points. All right, let's go through here just a little bit here. Nibbling, I don't really call these different tactics. I like these action items. So nibbling, hot potato, good guy, bad guy. You guys can interpret that however you want, but I do like these little scenarios. Once your client has agreed upon a major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions. So what that means is sometimes when another side sees another side give up more than they thought they would, they start to have this second guess, this preconceived notion that there may be more that you can pull out of them. So this happens a lot in our industry. This happens all the time. You get somebody, a buyer or a seller, or somebody's going through inspection negotiations, and somebody wants a $3,000 seller concession, right? You want a $3,000 seller concession, but the reality is that your buyer would be okay with $1,500, right? And so your buyer goes in, and the sellers actually give you a $2,000 concession. They don't even counter in the middle. Then your buyer starts to think, well, wait a second. I wonder if we can get $2,500 out of them. Bruce, why don't you go back to them and see if they'll do $2,500? Tell them we don't like the $2,000, but that we want $2,500. That's what nibbling is. That's what that piece is. Whenever you go back and forth, the other side, a lot of people, a lot of clients will not go into negotiations with their end all be all, right? So like Darby said in her example, nope, I already know what my clients will do. This is the hard line in the sand, right? Sometimes you need to do that on your other side. Sometimes you need to draw that line in the sand before something's even presented to you. So that way you don't fumble or falter over the phone. This nibbling process can really get to your sellers or your buyers. I've watched my buyers cave, and sometimes I'm like, guys, don't cave. They're just asking you this question. I already know, my gut instinct is they'll do this for X. but they're asking me to ask you this, and it's my fiduciary duty to ask you this. And sometimes my buyers will cave. Sometimes my buyers will draw a line in the sand, and because the other side starts nibbling at us, they cave. So be careful, because it's a tactic. If you start to see that happen up front, know that it's going to happen throughout the entire piece of the contract. I've never had it any other way. If you have a listing agent or a buyer's agent on the other side that starts to use that type of tactic, understand that they're going to do it the entire way, and that the faster you can nip those types of things in the bud, do it. The other party tries to pass a problem on to you. For example, the co-op agent, you guys understand what the co-op agent is? The other agent on the other side. Okay. The co-op agent tries to pass all closing costs to your clients because their client can't afford them. I think that one is honestly just simple. It's spelled out. So when you go through your contracts, there's all these different areas where you can put in whether the buyer or the seller will pay for these different things, right? We know that those are options in the contract, but as you get good at this, you understand, and you'll start to really understand that there are times where there's just some things that are just kind of unwritten around here, right? For example, if I ask Darby, who pays for title insurance? Darby, who commonly pays for title insurance?
The seller.
Okay, right. And it's probably what? Have you ever had the buyer pay?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I've never had my buyer pay.
But the option in the contract is there almost every single time.
Let me rephrase. We've done half and half.
Perfect. I think you did half and half on owner's extended coverage. I don't think it was actually title insurance. Either way, it could be. I could be wrong too. The key is that there are some things that are options in there, and there are some things that you're going to hear them say, I can't afford this, or the buyer can't go over this dollar amount or this threshold. The reality is that those are just tactics. Let the documents speak for that. And then just don't let human emotion get in the way of what your sellers or your clients want to do. Okay? Don't relay. That's not a piece of information you need to relay. So if I have a buyer's agent call me and say, hey, look, here's our offer. You know, they have about $3,000 in appraisal deficit money. And, you know, we really can't go higher than this offer. We can't really afford the monthly payment on this. And this is all we have. The reality is that I'm not going to go back to my seller and say, we can't afford this. They can't do this. They can't blah, 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 blah. To be honest with you, if they say that, I actually don't like that buyer, because they sound like they'll never be able to negotiate on anything. They won't be able to afford any repairs. They won't be able to do any of that. So I actually, on any side of this, I don't like this tactic at all. But passing the problem on to another party because of another party's situation is for me, it's one of the easiest pieces to sniff out and get away from. One of the best examples that I have for you is I listed a townhome for $270, and I got an offer at $260 because the buyer really wants it, but this is all that they can afford. I told my seller right off the rip, I don't love this offer, because if this is all that they can afford, then that means anything that comes up on inspection, they're going to want you to fix, because they don't have money to go into the house and actually get those things repaired. So they're passing your problem on, they're passing their problem on to you. So be careful. I know it's only been a week since we've listed the house, but I'm not educating you on going 10 grand under. Hang tight. We closed at 269, I think is what we closed at, because we waited just a 1 week longer and we finally got an offer. Be careful when people pass their problems on to you or your clients.
Yeah, because your goal is to get as much for your client.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's emotion. Just let emotion stay out of it. That phrase right there. Can't afford them? Then get the heck out of here and go find something you can afford. Good guy, bad guy. Two people working together will take on opposing roles. One appears to be friendly and considerate, and the other one appears to be difficult and aggressive manner. Think of the typical car salesman, good guy, who says, I'll talk to his manager. Bad guy, the manager won't let them reduce price any further. your clients will do this to you, but more often than not even just your clients, the opposite side, right? Well, the wife's on board, but the husband's not. I'm having trouble getting the husband on board. Is this really what your clients want to offer? Yes, this is. I don't care about whether somebody's on board or not. Don't let somebody trap you into the good guy, bad guy piece. I don't think that happens too often in our industry. I see a lot more nibbling and hot potato than I do good guy, bad guy. But again, I don't think our industry uses those names either. It's just pieces of negotiation. All right, positioning yourself. Position yourself to move towards the actual agreement or the goal or the end game, right? There's oftentimes throughout the entire process, I have to bring everybody back around to the end game or the end piece. All right. So we'll go through this because I think we've talked quite a bit on most of this. Acknowledge and affirm the common ground. Reiterate, repeat different things that come out of people's mouths. Because again, if you know that another agent is kind of just speaking on their client's behalf and you reiterate it in a way in which, oh, okay, so what I hear you saying is that your clients are looking to do this, or your clients are standing their ground on this. That's 100% fact, right? Reiterate those things. Make sure that the other side knows that you are listening and paying attention to it. And whenever whenever somebody kind of crosses their words or starts to go what I call hypocritical, meaning they say one thing, but their action speaks a different way, then I try and connect those dots for them. I try and acknowledge them. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, help me understand. You know, I really know that your clients want to get to North Carolina. My buyers can close in 2 weeks. But what you said is that price is more important. But then there was another piece of that. You said that, you know, closing in 2 weeks was more important. Help me understand what is the most important thing here, right? You can, don't let people trip you up. If you have a question around what somebody's saying, acknowledge it, call it out. Don't do it in an aggressive and a demeaning manner. Just ask them to help you out, help you understand. Because if you don't understand, it's really hard to go back to your buyers. And the worst thing that you want to do is get on the phone with your buyers and go, hey, the sellers are looking for this and this. And then your clients call you out and say, well, which one do they want? I don't get it. They can't have their cake and eat it too. And then you go, well, actually, that's a good question. Let me go back to them, right? Figure it out right there. And when you can do it over the phone, a lot of times the listing agent or the buyer's agent will start to overspeak. Ask what and how questions, right? We just talked about that. Help me understand. How is that? How is that? Why is that important? A lot of those are tie downs, different things, right? I like this example. Mr. and Mrs. Seller are requesting a 30-day closing. What is important about a closing in 30 days, right? Why are they looking for that? Well, my goal is to let the buyer know why that's important to you. You guys, on the one side of things, don't take things for face value. And on the flip side of it, if you're the one being asked that question, why does your seller need 30 days? And they don't actually need 30 days, but they would like it or they'd prefer to because they would save on a mortgage payment. Don't give that up to the other side. Don't say, hey, we'd like to close in 30 days so that way my clients don't have to shell out another $2,000, because then the other side knows that there's really no timeline and that you can probably offer whatever you want and entice the seller to do something that they may or may not want to do. So ask how and what questions when you're on the opposite side, when you're on the side that wants to probe. Positioning is a process. You might not be able to figure out everything in one fell swoop. I say positioning is a process. You may need to get off the phone, process everything, and call that same individual right back. There are some people in our industry that just will throw you for a loop because they're very good at talking and they're very good at going around in circles, causing you to feel like you're accomplishing something. And then as soon as you get off the phone, you realize you accomplished nothing. I like to be that agent. I like to talk and ask as many questions as I can. I go 3 questions deep with all different agents. I want to see if I can trip them up. I want to see if I can cross their words. I want to see if they're consistently genuine with what they're telling me. Because if they are consistently genuine, then it means it's actually coming from their client and not just them spewing out different random answers. Okay. Know when to walk away. Setting expectations and standards for your client around our market and having them understand what their walk away point is a very key piece to know. You wouldn't believe how many times, I'm watching buyers right now throw everything at an offer. They throw their entire nest egg, their entire savings at an appraisal deficit gap. They're going up 50 grand over their actual comfortable budget. Those are the types of people that may go into foreclosure in a year from now, that are going to be house poor down the road. You do not want your clients, when you ask them for referrals, you don't want to bring up that animosity in their life. So be careful, because we do have an end game to get our buyers into homes, and we get our sellers out of their current living situation or sell their home, right? But if you got to know when your walk away point is, if you have a seller who needs to net X amount of dollars to get to the next place, then let them draw the line in the sand. Even if you're halfway through a contract and the buyer's being so difficult and is very close to enticing you to take $5,000 less than what you even drew the line in the sand around, if you know your walk away point, it's much easier to walk away. If you develop your walk away point in the middle of negotiations, oftentimes a seller will give up more than they should, and a buyer will pay more than they wanted to or will. And the last thing you want to do is leave that disdain in somebody's mouth just to get to the end, to the closing table. Because again, the reality is that if you know that you can walk away, then that means you still have a client who still wants to go buy a house. Yes, you need to spend a few more hours with them in the car going to show them houses. But the reality is that throughout that process, you're probably gaining a client for life and a referral partner for life.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what Bruce is saying, two things. One is, if they hate the house, they're going to hate you. It's just that, that you're tied to that house.
Yep.
And oh my God, I just, believe it or not, I had a client that called in the office and they wanted a house and they really couldn't afford. And so I sat them down and said, why don't you wait a year? Why don't you guys take and save $250 or $300 more a month so it can help with your down payment? Because they would have been, Bruce said it earlier, they were going to be house poor. They were going to end up hating the house and they were going to hate me. So anyway.
Bingo. So to wrap this up, I want to go through some more tangible, real world type of things as far as negotiating goes. When you guys are negotiating, I strongly recommend that when you first start to do this, you write down, have a notepad, have something beside you for that conversation. Because the key is, guys, my negotiation tactic is what I call that whirlwind or that storm. I'm a tornado agent. I will run you around the gamut of questions after questions after questions, just to make sure that the biggest pet peeve in my entire career is when agents speak on behalf of their clients without consulting their clients. If I can pick up on that, I will pick you apart throughout the entire contract. Because once an agent does it once, it's their habit. It's what they do on a daily basis. Guys, I walk around our own office and I listen to people on the phone do this. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, my job is to make sure I'm helping my clients. And I can't help my clients if I can't get through the other agent. Make sure you're not the agent that brings this wall up. Make sure you're not the agent that creates animosity. Make sure you're not the agent that lets their emotion get the best of them. Because there are agents like me I'm a tornado agent. I will run you around in circles until I clearly go, look, you guys, I understand that this is what you're saying, but you said 2 minutes ago, you said this. So I know that's not your client's actual answer. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to not act on behalf of your clients. My buyers really want this house, but it's for you and I to stay out of their way. Would you just please go back and ask your sellers this question for me? And sometimes it's the same answer and sometimes it's not. But the time that they come back with that different answer is usually the time where I can understand that it absolutely was from their side. And then I actually have something to go back to my buyers with. Now, the other, go ahead.
Sorry, Bruce.
No, you're good, man. I love it.
The only other thing I'd say is you have Bruce or me and Jesse call when you have that first buyer or seller and or buyer and you're gonna make an offer. Make it to us first. Call us and say, hey, I just want to, I want to go through this before I just did one yesterday for an agent in Castle Rock, and we went through it, and there was a couple of things we just changed it a little bit, and she was ready to go. You're a lot more confident when you've done it once or you've done it twice, and you can go then and make that offer. So, and so I just say use us as that resource on your first couple of deals so that you feel comfortable with it. Don't go out by the seat of your pants.
Yep.
Sorry.
Bingo. Lean into us. I've been through all sorts of negotiation tactics. I love tornado agents because I'm one of them. I can sniff them out from a mile away. If you tell me about how your interaction was with that other agent, I can pretty much tell you they were just trying to trip you up, right? And when you're a new agent, you don't have the cojones to talk on behalf of your clients. You guys are the easier ones to work with. I love working with new agents because I know you're not going to talk on behalf of your clients. If you do talk on behalf of your clients, I can sniff that out right away, right? So be careful. There's agents that have been around in the industry for a long time. They're tired. They just want to get the deal done. They don't want to spend more time on the phone than is necessary. And so they're just going to rattle off BS. So ask many, many, many questions. What do you guys do if you guys are in the middle of negotiation and you can't get a hold of the other agent? So you want to submit an offer. All offers are due by Sunday at noon, and it's Saturday at 7 p.m. Your buyers just get you a response back that says they want to move forward with an offer. You call the agent and you got nothing. You start writing up the offer because you don't want to miss the deadline, but you don't know how to formulate the offer. You don't know you don't know what terms are important to the seller. You have no idea anything. And now here it is, it's about 11 o'clock and you're freaking out. You don't know whether you should submit the offer by the deadline. You don't know if you should wait because everything in your power says, I need to talk to this other agent. What do you do? I love Brady's face, so I'm going to call him out on this one.
I would say, just maybe try and look it up on public records and talk to the owners themselves. No?
I would call the office. So like if it's Keller Williams, I'd call the Keller Williams office. Hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Bruce Carley. We're about to submit an offer. Haven't had a return call. Can you help me out? Can you see if maybe you could get a hold of him? Have him call me back.
And the office says, hey, I appreciate that. Actually, that agent doesn't do a whole lot of calls. You're probably not likely to get a hold of them.
Well, typically, like if I call and they don't call me back, I text them anyway.
Okay.
And say, hey, I just left you a voicemail. Please respond via text or give me a call back.
They're not calling you back.
And not texting back.
Nope.
Then I'm going to find them on Realist and go sit on their front porch and talk to them. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that.
But you got information to relay.
Can I speak to the managing broker?
You can. And the managing broker is going to say, what? I'll just tell you what the managing broker is going to say is, look, you don't have, they're not doing anything wrong. They don't have to talk to you. Submit your offer.
Yeah. I thought you were digging for something specific.
I am digging for something here. You can't talk to anybody. We already know.
Submit it.
What?
I would just submit it. I'm not going to wait till after the deadline. If I tried everything,
okay,
calling, texting, email,
So submit it. What else are you going to do? You're on the right track.
Can you offer, I don't know if this is a thing, but offer alternatives, like if you, either better terms and lower price or vice versa of that?
Where?
In the
additional.
Maybe, yeah.
You don't want your additional provisions to be all over the place. You guys are on the right path. Now you guys are there. So be careful. In negotiation, there's a lot of brokerages and a lot of people telling people, look, if you're new, don't you get into a conversation with these agents. There's people out there that have been doing this and will eat you alive. Make it very clear in your broker remarks how you're handling all offers. Send out multiple different emails through the Showing Time Service Center that gives updates. And never call anybody back. And don't answer your phone. There are brokerages telling agents to do that because they know that there's other agents out there that will trip you up. So you have a buyer, you really want this house, you don't know how to make the offer. Melissa's on the right path. You want them to understand what your capabilities are, but you can't have it in your offer and have it be so up in the air and there can't be too much ambiguity around, well, I know that the contract says we want to close on October 15th, but in additional provisions, buyer agrees to close whenever the seller wants. You guys just let your body of your email do the work for you. So submit the offer, and every single thing that so instead of getting the answer from this, what does the seller want, then relay to the other side what the buyer can do. Everything the buyer is willing to do, right? So this is where you might have to spell out, hey, look, the buyer's looking to close on October 15th. The lender says we can actually close as soon as October 7th. But if your seller needs more time, my buyers are willing to give up to a 2-month rent back for X amount of money. Like, have all of those conversations with your seller. Like, think through and think about every single thing that could happen or that could do with anything that's going on. Because what you need to understand is that when you can't get a hold of the other side, then you have to be that voice of reason. You have to give them everything that your buyer can do, not necessarily maybe what the seller wants. Because again, if the seller wants X, X, and X, and your buyer can't give a lease back, can't give $10,000 over an appraisal deficit, then they weren't ever going to get the offer anyways, right? But go through and let them know through that email, and that will help you. It's not, there's some agents that are they're difficult, and there's other agents that are just being educated on not answering your phone call.
Yeah, and remember, morale's based on expectations. So if you sit down with your buyer and you tell your buyer, look, this agent isn't calling us back, so let's do this, and then explain what you're going to do so that your buyer then feels comfortable with that next direction and isn't going to come back to you and go, hey, Bruce, I thought you said we were going to do, X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. You just want to make sure that, morale's based on expectations. Make sure you communicate how you're going to move forward because you couldn't get a hold of that agent. And then, I always like to do emails where you say, hey, so, my buyer's blah, blah, blah. I always like to attach an email that explains my offer, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Bingo. Negotiations aren't hard. They're timely, and a lot of it comes from experience. So the last thing that I'll leave you with, and I always want to leave you with this, reach out to me, reach out to Harry. We've done it a time or two. There's not one situation that I probably haven't been faced with, because the worst situation out there is what we just went over. Everything else is pretty easy to tackle, right? So just to leave you guys with this, some common things. Lean on your buyer or your seller. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. Even if you think you know the answer, but you're not really sure how you want it to come out of your mouth and you don't want to overspeak, let them know that you'll call them right back after you have, solidarity around it. Use those different outs. They're not really outs, guys. Tell them that you're going to get a hold of your client. You should not be talking on behalf of your client, so it's perfectly acceptable. Yep. In this market right now, you guys, if you haven't wrote an offer for a buyer, I'm up in the Fort Collins office right now. I just got done talking and meeting with a gentleman, and he has a buyer who he has a seller, He has a seller in Longmont who just listed their house for $450, and within 24-hour period, they have 9 offers on the table. He's a brand new agent. He's already telling me, Bruce, I don't know. All these agents are asking me all these questions. I don't know if I should call them all back. What do I say to them? Like I got my voicemail. I can't even keep up, man. I'm so lost. He's so lost right now. All I told him to do is remain calm, understand that you need to keep focused on what your seller's goals are. Go back, make an Excel spreadsheet around each of the offers, find those top 3 offers, and then call those guys back with the clarity. Every other agent, take their email because they sent you an email with the offer. Tell them you acknowledge their offer and that you'll get back to them and that you'll talk to the seller. If they have any specific questions, to email you back. And the people that are in the top 3 running, those are the people maybe you should call. And he's like, so I can just delete everybody's voicemail? Yes. The reality is that you do not. Our job is to present an offer to our clients. You don't have to have a dialogue with a seller or an agent. It's frustrating, and you're going to be on the other side, and you're really going to want to have a conversation with this person. But the reality is that if you're on a buyer side and you're submitting an offer in a multiple offer situation and you don't get a call back, I can guarantee you your offer was not good. It was not good. It was just not a good enough offer. Your buyers didn't put forth the right foot. And unfortunately, you're not really going to learn anything from that one situation. A lot of times you're going to have a buyer come back to you and go, well, why didn't we lose? We want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I hear that all the time. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The reality is the reason why you lost out on that offer is probably not going to be the same reason you lost out on this other offer, right? Just because you have $7,000 in an appraisal deficit money doesn't mean that that won't be enough for the next offer. If that's all you have, then put forth your best foot and keep going. Keep trying. Don't let your buyers make one situation the end all be all, the golden nugget, the thing that they lost on, right? For example, that agent in our office just got an offer accepted $8,000 under the highest offer. That was a situational specific incident, right? I had a buyer who wanted to go $31,000 over list price, offered $31,000 over an appraisal deficit, and they ended up losing that offer because there was another offer that came in with cash. We went ahead and made another offer on their second choice, offered $9,000 over appraisal deficit, and we got it. So it's not about how much appraisal deficit money there is. You guys, the negotiations are matching buyers and sellers situations up. That's the key. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Negotiations, it's way more simple than I ever thought it was. I never knew that I was a great negotiator. I just have great questions, which is why I became the tornado agent. I like to spin people around. I like to make sure that their words are consistent. You'll hear me get on the phone with somebody, ask them a question. I'll talk for a few minutes so they forgot that I asked that question, and then I'll ask them that same question in a different way just to make sure their answer is consistent. That's my style of negotiation for sure.
So maybe at some other point we could talk about how you deal with a tornado agent.
Well, let's talk about it.
I mean, in other words, you're going to run into the Bruce's of the world. I mean, he's telling you that's how he is. So what would you do to counter a Bruce?
We already gave it to you.
Get them off the phone and answer an email.
Yep. Hey, that's a great question. I'll get back to you. I got to ask my clients.
You don't need to take 10 from him. And if Bruce says, hey, well, I've got a couple more, write them down. Say, okay, well, why don't you just give me those questions? Because then you're not going to get yourself into a repeat question. But Melissa, that's exactly what you want to do, is you want to get him off you want to get a Bruce through an email, because then everybody has the exact same information. He's not going to try to trip you up, because you're going to get the Bruces of the world, and that's not a cut, by the way.
No, I know it's not, because I'm a whirlwind agent, because I want to hear those words. I want to know that the answers coming out of your mouth are from your client. So as soon as somebody stops me and says, hey, Bruce, you got a lot of questions, man. You got a lot of questions. I don't really know the answer to all of these. Let me get back with you, and I'll give you a call back. I'm like, okay, great.
Well,
I only have.
Tell you what, it sounds like, because I'm going to have to get with my buyer. Why don't you send me an email? Let me give you my email address, write them down, and I'll get back to you, because I got to talk to my client.
Bingo.
You just neutralize the whole situation.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? I'm going to stop the recording here.
I think the big thing is lean on your mentor and your coaches, because like my first deal, I had a buy sell. We went under contract same day on both of them. Like literally, like it was insane. It was a whirlwind and it happened all in 3 days. Got the listing, got it up, went under contract on their offer to buy their house, and then went right under on their purchase of their house they were selling. But the one agent realized right off the bat I was new, took very good care of me, very sweet lady. I will always hold her dear to my heart. I really appreciated her. The second agent identified that I was new and tried to eat me alive.
Yeah, of course.
She was rough. I mean, tears. And my mentor at the time, Patrick, came in and was like, hey, cut the crap. She has a team behind us. We're trying to get your client to closing. We're trying to get my client into closing. Like, come on. Stop with the games. Let's just, we both have our client's best interests at heart. So stop with the games. And it was really nice because it was something I could not have said at the time. I wasn't confident enough to say that.
And now you know to not let your emotions get the best of you.
Yeah, and guess what?
Absolutely. And stand firm in what I'm doing because I was doing things correctly. He confirmed it, but I just didn't have I had a hard time communicating that over to her, and she knew it, and she was totally taking, control over it. So it's, the mentors are there for a reason. Use
That's
them.
right. And instead of Bruce controlling that situation that we talked about earlier, you get to control it. By
Exactly.
you telling him, hey, why don't you email me and do X, Y, and Z, you're back in control.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now the one that's going to move the thing forward the way you think it should be moved forward, not the way Bruce wants it to move forward.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
Got to run, guys. Got a call to make. Appreciate you. Take care.
Yep, guys. Great night.